Stronger after. You are stronger tomorrow.
Exciting session, Eastern Communications, and congratulations to the winner of the Kahoot game. Again, we
Yeah,
encourage you.
congratulations.
Again, we encourage you to join the midday breakout sessions that will begin in a few minutes. And to go there, you have to transfer to a different Zoom link. Please visit www.investphilippines.info/forum 2020 and look for forum agenda midday breakout sessions to sign up and have access to the following virtual rooms. Beginning at 12 noon, in virtual room A, we will have a mining session, and this will be by our earlier panelist, Mr. Gerard Brimo, President of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. Whereas in virtual room B, we will have a deep dive into tourism with Ms. Eileen Clemente and Dr. Cherry Lynn Rodolfo, co-authors of Arangkada Policy Brief on Tourism. At 12:45 in virtual room A, we will have agribusiness. And for this one, it will be Mr. Christopher Ilagan of Cargill. And also we will have infrastructure project development videos, 12:45 in virtual room B. Meanwhile, in virtual room C, there will be a playback of Philippines Pathway to Asia in a post-pandemic world, a virtual economic briefing, which is going to be very interesting. In the afternoon, there will be another playback, and this will be on advancing e-payments via public-private partnership. So head on there to watch the breakout sessions. And after attending them, please make sure that you return to this link so that you can attend the afternoon sessions. Kindly be here about 5 minutes before 1:30 p.m. as we will start the afternoon session promptly. And please do continue tweeting about the event using the event hashtag at Arangkada Forum 2020. We invite you to like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com Arangkada Philippines. Follow us on Twitter at Arangkada PH. And finally, join us on the LinkedIn app by looking for Arangkada Philippines. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great morning and have a great lunch and do watch those midday events. See
Thank
you
you very
later.
much. Thank you.
Energy. It's all around us. It's in each of us. Limitless energy, just waiting to be unleashed to enable human progress. Proudly servicing Chevron entities all around the world since 1998. We are the first regional operating headquarters in the Philippines, guiding the energy of the world. We are Chevron Holdings Incorporated. At Chevron, we develop the energy that improves lives and powers the world forward.
In Chevron, we deliver results the right way all the time.
Today, we are one of the most admired energy companies in the world. We work with the best and brightest minds. Every team is a diverse mix of talent and tenacity.
Collaborating as a team is what leads us to success and allows us to build relationships.
At Chevron, we give credit where credit is due.
Chevron has a culture of rewards and recognition for outstanding behavior and accomplishments.
Safety, health and wellness. We are committed to providing programs in all these areas to help balance work and personal needs.
What made me stay for a decade is knowing how Chevron values work-life balance.
We motivate employees to drive their own careers by giving them access to numerous career opportunities within Chevron.
I truly believe that Chevron is an organization that can take me to greater heights.
We enable Chevron's integrated global businesses through our reliable and efficient operations. We embrace the Chevron way and focus on getting results the right way.
Guiding
The energy
Of the world,
We are
Chevron Holdings Incorporated.
At Eastern Communications, we believe in a strong and personal connection. In prioritizing both our high-tech and our high-touch solutions, we bring back the human connection in the ever-expanding industry of information and communications technology. In doing so, we've amassed a wide array of various solutions designed to not only improve our clients' businesses, but to also create seamless experiences for their own customers. Every business needs reliable connectivity in order to maintain its day-to-day processes. These are only some of the many solutions and services that Eastern Communications has established over the years for our many partners. And while we still have a long way to go, you can be sure that Eastern Communications will continue to be your partner and take you from where you are now to where you want to go. Together, we can all finish strong for our tomorrow.
The Philippines moves to the beat of progress. And no one knows its pulse like BDO Unibank. With leading scale and reach, the expertise and local knowledge to connect you to Philippine business. BDO Unibank. We find ways.
2020. We hope that you enjoyed your lunch as well as attending some of the breakout sessions that we just finished. To introduce our guest speaker and our panel entitled Infrastructure Running in Place, let us welcome the President of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Julian Payne.
Thank you very much, Monette. Welcome everybody to this panel. My name is Julian Payne and I'm President of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. For those who don't know it, the Canadian Chamber has been around for about 35 years in this lovely country. We have about 200 members. We have a very simple mission: to promote, support, and represent Canada-Philippine business interests, both ways, investment both ways, trade both ways, business mobility both ways. And we have an open membership, so every one of you listening can join if you wish. Perhaps you're wondering a little bit about the title, Infrastructure Running in Place, and the question mark. Are we running in place compared with other countries? The WEF Philippine ranked 66th amongst the ASEAN 6 in overall infrastructure ranking in 2019. So it doesn't look as if we're the best. But the good news is that we're no longer running in place. The target spending, originally of 5%, has now jumped to much, much higher, reaching almost to 7%. In fact, from 2.9% in 2015, we now reached 2.5 times that level. That's an impressive increase. If you look beneath the top, though, you'll see an uneven growth. We've done quite well in ports and power, not quite so well in transport, railroads, and roads. We expect in the next competitive index to improve our standing. Anyway, just a word about infrastructure. This is essential for economic growth in any country in the world, but it's more than just economic growth of projects. Infrastructure binds a country together. We need infrastructure to be a country as a whole, to bind our islands, but bind our areas. So we should look at infrastructure not only from a purely commercial point of view, but also as part of a nation building point of view. To help us understand the situation of infrastructure, and we're going to switch a little bit to not just talking about the traditional infrastructure, but talking about the other kinds of infrastructure, such as health systems and so on. Our speaker for this panel is BCDA's Senior Vice President for Conversion and Development Group Engineering. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. Senior Vice President Bing Kang. Secretary Vince Desson wished to join, but he had to be called away for an emergency meeting of the IATF, and he sends his apologies. Holding a critical position, the Senior Vice President basically takes the lead in managing and supervising BCDA's biggest development projects and in making important decisions on the business development contracts with reputable private, local, and international companies. Clearly a key man to know, and ensuring that such are mostly advantageous to the Philippine government. Engineer Bing Kang holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of the Philippines and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Holy Angel University. He also attended executive training program in urban policy and governance from Nanyang Technological University and public-private partnerships in infrastructure at the Harvard Kennedy School. So this is a very experienced engineer who's seen the world and seen engineering from a wide variety of perspectives. Our panel, which engineer Bing Yang will join, is different from the infrastructure panels we've organized in the past years. It will not focus on just airports, bridges, power, rail, roads, seaports, and telecom, as in previous Arangkada Forum and other fora. With our panelists today, we hope to have more discussion on the infrastructure subsectors of health, of the digital economy, and PPP projects. While public funding for infrastructure is more restricted during a pandemic crisis, private sector liquidity is very high right now. And interest rates, as you know, are very low. Also, 25% of the 104 projects in the NADA flagship project list are now PPPs to be implemented by the private sector. So this is a real partnership in substance as well as talk. In addition, to the engineer, our panel consists of, and again, I hope I get the pronunciations correct, Mr. Paola Borromeo, President and CEO of Ayala Health, who also heads the Corporate Strategy and Development Group in Ayala. I think he's well known to most of you. Dr. Kevin Chua, microeconomist. I'm a macroeconomist, so I feel at home with him. A World Bank Philippines office and team leader for the recently released and timely Philippine Digital Economy Report 2020, a whole new area of infrastructure. Then we had my friend Ed Francisco, president of BDO Capital and Investment, who has joined us in previous fora and is widely recognized as one of the smartest or most amiable bankers in the country. I know there's a lot of smart bankers. I don't know how many amiable bankers we actually know, but this is one of them. Then fourth and not last, we have Mr. Michael de Guzman, Managing Director, Infrastructure, KKR, an American private equity firm, which I'm sure most of you know. He has over two decades of experience in financing infrastructure projects. KKR may now be, it probably is, the largest foreign investor in the Philippines over the last 2 years, for which we give great appreciation. Moderating the panel is Mr. Andrew Masigan, who writes well-researched columns, well-read columns on important issues facing business and the economy in the Philippine Star and Business World, two outstanding newspapers in this country. We extend a warm welcome to our speaker, to our panelists, and to our moderator. And we look forward to what they can do to explain to us the lessons of our present situation and the potential for our future in this broader context of what infrastructure means today. Thank you. Engineer Bin Nyang, please take the virtual stage and speak. Thank you. Salamat po.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, President Julian, for that kind introduction. So on behalf of Secretary Dizon, who is the Secretary of Flagship Project of the national government, as well as the President and CEO of Basis Conversion and Development Authority, we are happy to report the status of the Build programs of the President Duterte's administration. So we would like to move on with the presentation, please. Okay, we'll start slide number 1. All right, that's last slide. Ano? All right. So as mentioned earlier by President Julian, he pointed out that clearly the government is serious in pursuing massive government spending on infrastructure in order to catch up with our ASEAN neighbors. And our table shows here that we are in fact averaging, if not above average, with our ASEAN peers. So at 6%, which is more than triple than the 2001 level and double than the last administration. And the government is intent on increasing it further. But as we all know, the pandemic, which is a black swan phenomenon, happened. So, but still, our government is serious in delivering all the projects contained in the build plans and programs of the administration. So let us show you some of the accomplishment that the national government has undertaken, has completed. This is a composite of economic agencies like the OTR, DPWH, and other key agencies of the national government. Here we're seeing the Harbor Link, which is a private led project under PPP. So this is aimed to be reduce the road congestion between Port of Manila and Northern Luzon. So this project has been completed. In fact, I'm one of those who had experienced this. So really, it's a great uh, uh, infrastructure to have in order to reduce congestion in Metro Manila. And then next, this was completed in third quarter of 2020. The next project is the broadband project with Facebook. As we all know, in the rankings among internet connectivity, the Philippines placed among the last position in terms of internet speed. But with this project initiated by BCDA and DICT, we already completed this bypass project, which allow the national government to own more than 2 terabytes of broadband capacity that can be used to power government agencies and other public spaces, especially in the underserved and unserved areas in the country. So the next stage for this one is, which is part of the, can you bring it back? So the next stage for this one is to bring it closer to the national government agencies, and we are about to sign an agreement with the DICT to implement the backhaul component. This project, to enable it to be operationalized, has three components, which is this is the first part, meaning this is a part of the international submarine cable by Facebook from China to the United States. So they will have to pass by our territory in Luzon Island. So in exchange, they will have to give us capacity. So that capacity, in order to be delivered to different government agencies, will have to install in place a backhaul connectivity. So that one is up for bidding by the national government. So later on, I will also discuss this one. Okay, next. This is the Angat Water Transmission Improvement Project. This was completed in third quarter of 2020. The goal of these projects is to increase the water reliability for Metro Manila's water domestic consumption. Okay, next. Of course, this one, which I use as my background also, is the first phase of the New Clark City, which is the sports facilities, where we use them in our successful hosting of the 2019 SEA Games, where we placed overall champion. So apart from the sports facilities, we have government buildings that we have completed, and we already have the first locator coming from Metro Manila, which is the National Bureau of Investigation, to put up their national headquarters in New Clark City. This is aligned with the recently issued executive order of President Duterte, Executive Order 119, mandating all government agencies to put up satellite or backup offices in New Clark City, so that it will serve as a for disaster resiliency. If something happened in Metro Manila, the government is always up and running, and through New Clark City satellite offices, they can still respond to the requirements of the citizens, and they can manage all government agencies remotely using the spaces in New Clark City. Okay, next. The Laguna Lake Highway, which was completed more than a year ago, this has cut the travel time between Bulacan, Rizal, and Laguna. This is more than 10 kilometers, a 4-lane, well-paved highway. So this has already been in completion for more than a year, and residents of those provinces have been enjoying this infrastructure. Okay, next. The Cagayan de Oro Port, which is among the busiest ports in the island of Mindanao, in a almost an hectare area. It serves more than 3,000 passengers daily. This has been completed also last year. Okay, next. The T-Plex, which we know is which makes travel time to the north very pleasant and comfortable. The last segment of the Tarlac Pangasinan La Union Expressway, which is Pozo Rubio up to Rosario, which is the gateway to Baguio City, and the Ilocos provinces has been completed last July 2020. So with this link from Manila to Baguio, you can do a day trip now because it's just 2 to 3 hours away. Baguio is just 2 to 3 hours away with safe and comfortable travel between it. Okay, next. This is a personal proud project for me because I handle this one. This is the expansion of the new passenger terminal building in Clark. We've completed the structure, and we've also awarded the O&M part of this through the Changi-led consortium, and they're doing now fit-out works, meaning they're going to install the passenger boarding bridges, the check-in counters. So the completion and opening of this new terminal building is by first half of next year. This new terminal building has a capacity of accommodating up to 12 million passengers a year. And the size of this terminal building is bigger than Terminal 1, Terminal 2, and almost the size of Terminal 3 in Naiya. Okay, next. And then the Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3. So we're moving on now to projects almost nearing completion. We are all eagerly looking forward to this project, and this one will definitely help decongest the EDSA, the main artery of Manila. So we're looking forward to the completion of this one in the coming months. Next, the MRT7, which was under the DOTR administration, is more than 60%. So this one will ease the travel time between San Jose, Del Monte, and Bulacan to Quezon City. This is more than 22-kilometer stretch. Okay, next. And then the BGC to Ortigas Bridge. So this will help decongest the Guadalupe and artery, which at the present going from BGC to Pasig will take you at least an hour. But with this interconnection, it will take you just in 12 minutes time. So it will really relieve the traveling between these two key business districts of Metro Manila. Next, the Central Luzon Link Expressway. The entire stretch is almost complete. The government is soon about to award O&M, the private the operations and maintenance of this infrastructure together with the right to build the extension, because this CLEX is from Tarlac, which is at the end of our SCTEX, Subic Clark Tarlac Expressway. It will be connected up to Cabanatuan. That's phase 1. But the phase 2, which be under the O&M concession arrangement, will be the extension of CLEX up to San Jose in Nueva Ecija. Next. And then we've added, the national government have added 13 infrastructure flagship projects, some of which are in response also to the need to address health issues, especially the pandemic, as well as the COVID pandemic, as well as security on key resources for the citizen. So like in the ICT, as I mentioned earlier, we're done with the Luzon Bypass infrastructure. The National Broadband Program now calls for the construction of the backhaul infrastructure, meaning from San Fernando and Baler in Aurora, there will be a cable line to bring it to Metro Manila. So we are about to sign an agreement with the ICT in order for BCD to procure the services of a specialty contractor to build this one. This is about ₱1 billion worth of project. Underwater, we are seeing more and more utility projects aimed at strengthening our water resources capability. And then in the transportation, we've highlighted some of the projects here. In the health, that's where I would like to point out the Virology Science and Technology Institute of the Philippines. This is a key priority legislation by the present Congress. So they've chosen New Clark City to be the site of the institute. This is aimed to address future COVID-like pandemic and to prepare the country for this for such kind of phenomenon. So these are additional projects which the government will uh, implement or start to implement in the coming months. Next. As for BCDA specifically, we're also glad to inform you that in our new Clark City, we already awarded several PPP contracts. This one is the Widas Banyan Tree Luxury Mountain Resort. So the country will be hosting the first Banyan Tree Resort luxury hotel. So we are about to approve their key master plan, but we already signed their lease contract last year. This is for a 450-hectare site development. Next. And our board recently approved the partnership with the Department of Agriculture. This is the Agro-Industrial Hub and National Seed Technology Park. You know, one of the key lessons that the pandemic has taught us during the lockdown is the need to assure our people of food security. So in order to sustain the basic necessities of the people. So with this one, it assures us that a national seed technology or a bank park is in place so that the government can respond to any future risk on food security. It will be located in a 30-hectare site in New Clark City. Okay, next. As I mentioned earlier, we are about to sign a lease agreement with the Virology Science and Technology Institute of the Philippines. So we've already talked with the DOST how to put in place the structure, the framework, and then the partnership for this important project of the national government. Next. And then another priority project of the government as well is to develop grassroots talent for our young citizen. So we've got approval from Congress to implement the National Academy for Sports. This will complement our phase one project for New Clark City sports facilities. And we are going to build more world-class facilities for our sports scholars. And the target that was given to us by our key legislators is to have this ready for class opening by next year, whether it's August or October. So the pressure for us is to start the design and build implementation of this key infrastructure by January of next month. Okay. And then the National Government Administrative Center, we're ready to accommodate satellite offices. As I mentioned earlier, can you flash the next slide, please? So we've already signed a lease agreement with the National Bureau of Investigation for them to locate their key offices in New Clark City, as well as other government agencies. We're finalizing our arrangement with them, such as the Department of Science and Technology, their ASTI office and research facilities, as well as the Office of Civil Defense and the Office of the President. Okay, next. And this one, we've already signed an agreement with also with the Supreme Court, the First Judiciary Regional Center, and then their Archive Academy. So they really want to protect their records, of course. So they're putting it in a safe location, which is in New Clark City, away from risk from flooding and other natural disaster or calamity. And then next. This one, we've already signed an MOU and we're finalizing and soon to sign the lease agreement with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, their currency production facility, which is currently located in Quezon City, but they're transferring all their facilities in New Clark City because it has security, concerns in their existing facility in Metro Manila, in Quezon City. So with this decision of the national government, especially the monetary policy body of the government to move to New Clark City, it augurs well with our drive to have all government and executive agencies to put up shops in New Clark City. Okay, next. So I think those are some of the projects that we're doing. But apart from those two key major projects that I just mentioned, I'm also happy to note that two major rail projects of the national government through the Department of Transportation are already in full swing. The North-South Commuter Railway, which is co-financed by ADB and JICA. It will cover New Clark City, Clark International Airport to Metro Manila up to Calamba in Laguna. The Malolos to Tuban section, which is under JICA, is already under full construction mode. And then the Malolos to Clark International Airport, all the contract packages, the civil works, the 5 contract packages were already awarded by the government. In fact, we're prioritizing this one. Among their 3 contract packages, they are to be located inside Clark, which is the property of BCD. And we're already given the contractors of DOTR permit to enter. So the winning contractors are of reputable record. They are from Korea, from Spain, from Italy, and other local contractors. So these, we all know that these rail projects have long gestation period, but the good thing is the government has already implemented and put in place the needed momentum to make these projects to be completed even by the next administration. This NCSR project, this Malolos or Manila to Clark or up to Calamba project, together with the Mega Manila Subway project, these two alone have a combined cost of more than 1.5 trillion pesos, which is, I think, a third already of the overall plan or budget for the Build programs, but they are already in place. They are game changer for us. They are equalizer, meaning it will greatly benefit the population in terms of mass transportation service. So we would like to highlight just some of the key infrastructure plans of the government, and later on we will add more. So on that note, thank you very much, and we'll join later on the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Joshua Bingkang, for that very interesting presentation on all the things that's happening in that Build project. Please remain on stream to join our panelists rather, for the discussion. I would like to call on the moderator for this panel. He is an economist, an entrepreneur, and a columnist at Business World and Philippine Star, Mr. Andrew Masigan. Joining him. Hi, Andrew. Let me just continue introducing the other.
Sure, by all means.
Yeah. Joining him is our first panelist, the head of Corporate Strategy and Development Group of Ayala Corporation, and also President and CEO of Ayala Health, Mr. Paulo Borromeo. Next is an economist at the Macroeconomics Trade and Investment Global Practice of the World Bank Philippines, team leader of the Philippines Digital Economy Report 2020, Dr. Kevin Chua. Our fourth panelist is the Managing Director, Infrastructure, KKR, Mr. Michael de Guzman. And finally, to complete your panel, Andrew, is the President of BDO Capital and Investment, Mr. Eduardo Francisco. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Monette. That was a very interesting and inspiring talk by Mr. Bingkang there. And what makes it even more inspiring is that these are projects mostly from the BCDA, as I understand, and there are more projects in the pipeline from the DPWH and DOTR. So indeed, there are a lot of projects to look forward to. So again, I'm happy to be here and moderating this event. Let's dive into the questions so we can make the maximum use of the 1 hour that we have. Okay, let me start with Mr. Joshua. Is it okay if I call you Joshua? Let's go first names for now, okay?
Yeah, call me Jake. I
Jake.
prefer Jake more.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Okay, Jake, the Department of Budget and Management reported that infrastructure spending was actually down by 33% in the third quarter. And this explains why the economy has contracted by 11.5% for the said period. Now, my question is, has infrastructure spending ramped up so far in the fourth quarter? How far off are we from the 2020 budget? And what can we expect for 2021?
Okay. So really the COVID-19 pandemic and its consequential lockdown, the entire country where everybody went to standstill. Like we've lost almost 6 months. But the good thing is all of those projects that are ongoing before the pandemic have resumed fully, of course, with safety protocols in place. But all of those infrastructure projects have started or have resumed already and allowed the government to complete those already nearing completion, as I reported earlier. So for fourth quarter, we expect a significant increase as compared to the last 2 quarters, and also probably an additional increase as compared to the same period of last year. So the key point here is the government, when it reopened the economy, put greater emphasis on infrastructure spending, because this is where also it will help the economy in terms of job generation and employment for the citizen. So it is on that note that we think the fourth quarter report of NEDA later on will provide a more encouraging result for the country.
Great, thank you. And let me speaking of the pandemic, no, let me direct this question now to Paulo, because from Ayala Health, no. Paulo, the Ayala Group has stepped up in a very big way to assist government in fortifying its testing and quarantine facilities during the height of the pandemic. What else is in the pipeline for Ayala Health and as far as public infrastructure is concerned?
Thank you, Andrew. First of all, good afternoon to everyone, and it's a pleasure to be. Thank you to Engineer Jake for the presentation, and good to be with our other panelists. Michael and Ed, of course, are my idols, so I'm privileged to be in a panel with them. But I think it's good too, Andrew, that the discussion on infrastructure is not just about hard infrastructure. No, at the Ayala Group, we believe that any discussion in infrastructure should include both hard infrastructure and what we call soft infrastructure. And as you said, we had taken more proactive approach at investing in these types of infrastructure projects, specifically in healthcare and in education. And it's served ourselves well and served our communities well that we got into healthcare when we did. I just wanted to say that I think in healthcare, with the pandemic, clearly the crisis has exposed quite a few weaknesses in our system, even more than we had anticipated in the past. No, but we saw different issues emerge in terms of the lack of infrastructure. Again, when I say infrastructure, I mean health infrastructure. And when I say that, I mean in terms of beds, ICU beds, in terms of laboratories, testing facilities, etc. And then at the same time, even human infrastructure. So in the form of manpower, doctors, nurses, med techs, pharmacists, etc. So we're really quite a few steps behind in the healthcare sector. And from our perspective, it's really worth. I think the crisis has brought this to light. And it's worth the public and the private sector investing heavily into healthcare, not just for capacity building, but for capability building in the space. No? I used to say, as a country, we have 100,000 hospital beds, Andrew. No, so that's one for every 1,000 people. The WHO requires 3 out of every 1,000. So just absorb that for a second. We technically need 300,000 beds. and we have 100,000 beds in the country. Now, in Metro Manila, in the NCR region, that's less felt because we have 2.5 beds per 1,000 people in NCR. But in other cities and in other regions, we have less than 1 hospital bed per 1,000 people. So on average, falling quite short, and we really need more capital, more investments directed to building these types of infrastructure projects, especially in the healthcare sector, to prepare us better for future pandemics, because this is not going to be the last that we will face as a nation and as a global community.
Thanks, Paulo. But we also know that well, Ayala is involved in medical retail, in laboratories, in education. What else is the company investing in the medium term in terms of medical infrastructure?
Yeah, well, I think a few weeks ago, and I agree with Engineer Jake that more investments need to be made, especially now in this time when we can, to the extent that we can, to fuel the economy. On our side, we announced that we would push through with our plans to build the country's first dedicated cancer hospital. This will be located in Arca South at the food terminal in partnership with the Taguig city government. 100-bed hospital that's dedicated to oncology with quality cancer services. But of course, we also made it a point to make it affordable. So this is not for the affluent segments. This is for the broader base of the population. And we have a fantastic partner, Cancer Treatment Services International from the US, who have great expertise in building oncology models for the developing markets in India and Sri Lanka. And we're excited that we are pursuing it. We also have a partnership, of course, with our Qualimed group, Andrew, which is a grouping of 4 hospitals in Batangas, Laguna, Iloilo, and Bulacan. Last week, we announced that we would expand these facilities further as COVID referral hospitals. And we look forward to a continued partnership with the Qualimed group to expand our presence in the hospital space.
A lot of things to look forward to, huh, with Ayala Health. That's good to know. Anyway, let me direct this next question to Ed. Ed, bad debts are on the rise, following the bloodbath in the retail and tourism and many other industries. How has this affected the available capital of the banking sector to finance large infrastructure projects, big ticket infrastructure projects?
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Hello to everybody. Anyway, it's good to know that the Philippine banks are very strong. So we have enough capital, despite already a lot of us putting our provisions. It's already affected their stock prices, but it's better to be prepared. So we've already booked the provisions. There's enough capital. There's enough liquidity. The government has done that. Their share. Governor Ben has reduced interest rates, reduced reserves. So what we really need, in fact, Andrew, are more projects, because we've always, since the last 2 years, I've been saying that there's enough capital. The banks have shored up their capital. They raised tier 1, they raised equity, but there are not enough projects for us to finance. Part of the reason also was because before, the government was focused on more on, I guess, government-to-government funding and projects, right? There are very, very few PPP projects. It was most of the PPP projects being completed were already won in the previous administration. But thanks anyway, the government now has changed their view. They're more open to that, and I think the PPP center is involved. So hopefully we'll see more private sector projects. Of course, there was a slowdown, as Jake mentioned, so we haven't seen much. But I guess the banks are ready. We've done a lot already on roads. We've done a lot also in some of the bridges, right? Jake mentioned TPLEX. BDO was the one who advised and funded that project. So a lot of these other projects we're involved in. We're working with Paulo and his group also, and of course with Mike. Mike and I also have lots of projects in the background that we cannot discuss yet. So I guess basically the private sector, whether it be Paulo, Mike, and then be as a banker working with them, we're always there ready to work with them, ready to fund them. It's maybe the question more is, are there enough projects, and are the projects, I guess, bankable? Because maybe just a question for you, or not, just something to think about with no specific answer. Even if, let's say, Mike here and Paolo have enough appetite as the corporates to spearhead this, the projects have to be bankable and feasible, unless there's a government guarantee. But if the government does not give a guarantee, why will Mike and Paolo put up their equity when there's not enough usage or there's not enough support? So in a way, that's a delicate balance of the PPP projects. But the short answer is the banks are there ready, and we're excited, especially with proponents like KKR, Ayala, and the rest of the group. We're happy to work with them. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Ed. A lot of money in the system. I get that. Projects have to be viable and feasible, and preferably with government guarantee. I think that's the core of the matter. I think Jake will agree with me that our beloved finance secretary is always hesitant in
yeah, of course. Yeah, we're allergic to guarantees. At least some sort of support, not an outright guarantee. That's not doable anyway in today's market, Andrew.
Sure. But nevertheless, if the project proves viable per feasibility studies, then there shouldn't be any reason why not. No? But I have a follow-up question to that. Let me go to Michael first before rounding out to that follow-up question. Michael, KKR invested 41 billion in the country recently. What attracted the company to the Philippines?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. I guess as an update on that number you mentioned, firstly, in the last 2 years, KKR has invested over $1 billion of capital into the Philippines, and that's across 4 investments: Voyager, Metro Pacific Hospitals, First Gen, and Pinnacle Towers, which operates a local brand called Frontier Towers, which is going to build telecom towers infrastructure. So hopefully all of those 4 sectors are in some way helping the country in terms of its hard and soft infrastructure needs across fintech, healthcare, telecoms, and power. I joined KKR 2 years ago, and it was pleasing that they had already finished a desktop study that across Asia, the Philippines should be one of the more investable countries in the region. And it's pleasing that a foreign investor did that analysis. And of course, there's the GDP growth, the macro parameters, the demographics, but there are also some subtle parameters that we like about the Philippines. We think that the infrastructure sector in general has good world-class concession agreements or power purchase agreements such that they are investable, as Ed mentioned, not only to the debt financiers, but also to foreign capital and of course domestic capital. So all of those big picture items about the country was a tick for KKR. And then when it came to the nitty-gritty of doing, private equity, infrastructure, hopefully we will also do credit, real estate, and social impact style investing over the coming years. We believe that there are many elements of the Philippines which make it, a comfortable place for us to invest more capital. So we actually see the $1 billion as simply a starting point, and we hope to maintain the space if we can find enough opportunities and investments, as Ed mentioned.
Did we freeze?
We might have lost Andrew.
Andrew, we can't hear you. I guess Paolo and I and Mike are okay, but you might be locked, Andrew. Yeah. Jake, you can hear us, no? Paolo, I can see you moving, so
yes,
we're okay. But so we're waiting for Andrew. Mike, keep on talking while we're waiting. There's dead air.
I can also add to what Paolo said earlier that in somewhat of a correction, you and Paolo are my kind of idols in the Philippines. So that's a bit of a correction there.
Yeah.
Ed, I think I've noticed we've switched names. I'm Mr. Marasigan now, so I think I will be the one.
Okay, go ahead.
Panel discussion now. You are Michael de Guzman now, Ed.
Anyway, the floor is yours.
Okay. So I think I will take a neutral stand now. I'm
okay.
with the government.
Yeah, Kevin, maybe Kevin, you can go ahead and I think we're still being heard. Pam mentioned that, sent us a message. It's continuing, but Mr. Masigan is out. Kevin, maybe you can please enlighten us on what's happening.
Digital infrastructure. I think we have a technical problem right now, so we really need to improve our digital infrastructure in the Philippines. Well, perhaps to begin with, digital infrastructure has shown to be very good investments all over the world. Extending internet penetration have resulted in positive impacts, let's say in economic growth, per capita GDP growth, job creation, and even poverty reduction. So this is a powerful message that we want to convey from the World Bank. Now, especially during this time, the pandemic, with social distancing measures, reduced face-to-face interaction and transaction, we have seen increased demand on digital services, digital payments, e-commerce, remote learning, video conferencing, and all of this are enabled by internet connectivity. During the recent report of Google Temasek Bain, they show that in the Philippines, in our country, 37% of digital services consumers are new users. That's a big number. And among these new users, 95% intended to continue this technological behavior post-pandemic. So we can see this digitalization momentum that's coming in the country. And there's more reason for us, therefore, to invest on digital infrastructure. Although, of course, some of you may have seen the report and we have been highlighting this. It's true. We cannot discount the fact that we are making progress, improvements in terms of digital performance indicators in the Philippines, like connectivity, prices, affordability, and penetration. But if we compare ourselves with our regional peers, who so happen to be also our competitors in the region, we lag behind many of the large Southeast Asian economies. For example, in terms of internet speed, this came from UCLA's October 2020. We ranked 111 out of 139 countries in terms of mobile speed. In terms of fixed broadband speed, 107 out of 176 countries. So there really is space to improve internet connectivity in our country. And one of the reasons for this was really the inadequacy in digital infrastructure. And yeah, in digital. So I see Andrew back on.
Hi, sorry about that.
We're talking about internet connectivity.
Yeah.
Which we have right now. So think about the towers in the Philippines, cellular towers. In 2019, we only have less than 20,000 towers in the country. Compare that with 70,000 in Vietnam, nearly the same population. This is equivalent to 4,000 internet subscriber per tower versus around 1,000 in Vietnam. So there's a big difference really between our performance and what's happening right now with Vietnam when it comes to digital infrastructure. So yeah, maybe I'll end there first and throw it back to our moderator.
Thank you, Kevin. And I'm sorry for disappearing for 4 minutes there. As Kevin mentioned, our internet connectivity could still improve very much, as a matter of fact. But anyway, let me ask you a follow-up question, Kevin. You mentioned about Vietnam having several thousands more cell sites than we do, no? But I believe the Duterte administration tried to address this by establishing the Anti-Red Tape Authority and considered the permits and the steps required to establishing cell sites as a priority. How has this affected the construction of cell sites, and what is the status today?
I would say, I think, okay, BIC and ARTA released this joint memorandum circular on the common tower policy. And as of September, I understand that the ICT already awarded around 23 certificates, provisional certificates to firms. So I think this is a good step forward. And also considering that in Bayanihan 2, there's a stipulation there that's suspended for 3 years. Many of the requirements for permits, licenses, and certification for the construction and installation of infrastructure, internet infrastructure. So I hope moving forward, this would be a good solution for the country, especially to have more private sector players into the country. So by private sector players, we don't just mean telco players. We are also talking about cable companies, tower companies, cable antenna TV operators, and other services providers. I think the key here really is to bring in more private sector players into the country, either local or foreign.
I think among the private sector players you're referring to is Pinnacle Towers of KKR. Michael, has it been easier? Has it been easier to set up cell sites since ARTA was established?
It's early days, but the management team of that business is reporting that there are indeed, kind of positive improvements in the way their negotiations are happening with the local, government units and the telcos themselves. So it feels like we're on the right path.
A bit of good news there. And before I got cut off, I was going to thank you for that $1 billion investment. That will go a long way, really, towards narrowing the current account deficit and also for strengthening the industries that need investing in. So thank you to KKR for that. Let me swing to Jake right now. Jake, well, we all know that the Philippines has the smallest stimulus fund in ASEAN. And analysts, and because of this, analysts are expecting our recovery to be among the slowest. Having said that, infrastructure spending should pick up the slack. Will government be more welcoming of unsolicited proposals as we move forward?
Yes. I think in the previous presentations that are being done by our Secretary for Flagship Projects, he included many projects lately included in the lineup as PPP-able projects. So the government is very much aware of the need to have private experts in managing these projects. Example, in our Clark Airport project, to make sure just to ensure that the government is able to complete the terminal building. So they resorted to this hybrid type of development or implementation or PPP model, where the government implemented the EPC contract, which was financed by two local big banks when Megawide built that infrastructure, that 10 billion infrastructure. But the O&M part, we welcome PPP or private partnership, which is a consortium of Changi and key local companies. So that kind of model that the government is implementing, especially in airport projects, will lessen the risk on the part of the private sector, especially the construction risk, to enable them to focus where they have more expertise, which is managing the operations and maintenance. As well as like in the rail projects, the government initiated the construction of these. Basically, these are economic projects, but the private sector can come into the O&M and into the TOD development, the transit-oriented development. I think this is where the private developers have already started to talk to DOTR as well as with BCDA, because we have several stations for the Mega Manila subway in BGC. They've approached us that they want to take the lead in developing this TOD the projects, part of the railway project. So the government is very much open with the participation of private sector partners. Of course, the government wants to ensure that guarantees are not the main consideration for private capital to come in. The project should finance or speaks for itself that they are capable of generating the needed cash flows in order to finance all the project requirements.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake. So yes, short answer is yes. PPP is something that government welcomes at this point, especially in the O&M side of it. But you don't rule out the construction side, no?
Yes, yes, of course. Then that will be a complete BOT arrangement where the private sector will start with the planning, designing, and construction. So that is also something the government is open.
Okay, let me direct this question now to Ed. No, so PPP projects have been undertaken by the same group of conglomerates over and over again, obviously because of their financial capabilities. Would BDO Capital be open to financing projects whose proponents may be up and coming? In other words, not the usual 7 conglomerates or 8 conglomerates. If so, would you be looking? Would you be willing to finance as much as 70% of project costs, as is the usual project finance ratio? Ed.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks for that. Yeah, in general, the key anyway is, first of all, if the project is viable, right? I'll just give you an idea. Recently, there was a deal that we tried to finance. BDO provided staple financing. There's an existing project that was being bidded out. Michael knows about this, but Michael, we cannot disclose, right? But we're under NDA. But it was being bidded out. So what BDO did is we studied the project and we got approval to fund the winning bidders. So we will not know what the bids were, so that at least where there's a Chinese wall. But should one of these find a shortlisted bidders win, we're ready to finance them. So that way we're agnostic on who the winner is, as long as they can meet the requirements. Of course, in general, Andrew, the equity owner should have some expertise. No, it cannot just be anybody, because while these projects are supposed to run on their own, if the equity owners or sponsors don't bring in the necessary expertise or have the management depth for these projects, then we might also become uncomfortable, because they aside from bringing in their 30% equity, they should also have management know-how. But in general, that's doable, because admittedly, of course, we've had success working with the Conglos because they're very good. They learn, they can bring in the talent. They have deep benches. Paulo, for example, has many hats, core planning, but he's also president of healthcare. Then he has other hats. But that just shows you how deep the bench of Ayala is. But then the other Conglos have their same. Also, they're very deep, so they can go into projects easily if needed. So I'm glad to hear from Jake that the government, we've seen a change in stance. They still prefer, unsolicited projects, or they're open out to solicited projects, but you have to go through the Swiss challenge, Andrew. But you go through that process. But otherwise, at least they're open, and then the private sector can come in. Too bad it was just the COVID postponed a lot of this, because of course we lost our workers. It's become more expensive to have them in now, because now you have to have them tested, you have the barracks. I talked to the real estate companies. There's additional cost for this, for the testing, for having them housed there, to bring in them from the provinces, because they have to be brought in by boat, by plane, whatever. It's challenging. But once they're there, you have to keep a safe environment. But the real estate companies and even the construction companies are hungry. They want to do more projects. So I guess we just want to get out of the starting gate again, and then we go on running. I guess that's the theme we have.
Well, it's good to hear that that the banking system are open to the up and coming ones, no? And this is part of democratizing the deals, so everybody gets to benefit. Yes. Now, to Paulo, the Ayala Group is well entrenched in public infrastructure. You're involved in water, in toll roads, in railways, telecommunications, etc. Tell me, what is the most difficult aspect in operating government regulated sectors? And I'm asking this so that government itself can know how to be more investment friendly as a regulator.
Well, I think, of course, we've, as you said, Andrew, we're in different sectors, most recently in power and also in the transport infrastructure, as Ed knows very well. But we've been in water since 1997. I mean, Globe Telecom has also been with us since the early 90s. And so it's not something that's foreign to us. And I think something that we've learned over time is these projects you cannot really well, number one, I think it has to be extremely transparent, right? You're working with of course with the public sector as a key stakeholder, but you're working with the with the public community at large, and you're held under a very high standard. Right? So whether it's in the delivery of water, the delivery of power, making sure that the trains work, so it's almost very hard to make a mistake. Right. So as Ed said, not only does your bench need to be very deep, they need to be very, very good, right? And sharp and on the ball all the time. And I think for us, those are the big learnings. Now, one is to be transparent about what we do, how we do things, and make sure that there's always open communication. If something goes wrong, that we are able to address it, that we are open about it, and that we mitigate it very quickly. And then the second is to make sure that we have the right expertise. And of course, it's leveraging the expertise within our group, but also looking at bringing in other skill sets, other capabilities. And I wanted to stress, Andrew, in the topic of public-private partnerships and unsolicited versus solicited proposal. I think one thing that we're seeing is more and more cross partnerships between the private sector, and that's extremely important so that you can really bring to bear the best combination of skill sets. And I think you'll see more of that. I think we're seeing it through the pandemic already. I mean, even in the laboratories that you had mentioned, Andrew, where many private sector participants participated, we're seeing it in the vaccines, in the preparation for the logistics, deployment of the vaccines, where just different private sector participants are coming together. And it's just such a heartwarming and encouraging thing to see where people are coming together. And I think crisis aside, we all realize that there is much to gain by working together. And I think you'll see more and more of that, particularly in these big ticket infrastructure projects.
You know what? A very good point, Paula. As a matter of fact, I was reading a piece about post-war development in Germany and Japan, and it was the first time. And one of the ingredients to the rapid development of these two countries was the cooperation between government, the private sector, and civil society. And the pandemic, for whatever it's worth, has brought that sort of cooperation to the fore. And I really hope that we can leverage upon this to move forward and accelerate our trajectory as a country, cooperating in that sense. So speaking as a foreign investor, Michael, what would be the 3 reforms you would recommend to the 19th Congress to make the Philippine investment climate more hospitable for foreign funds like yours?
Maybe I'll give some suggestions or big picture concepts rather than specific asks.
All right.
But hopefully these are general suggestions that all foreign investors, because we all want all that capital to flow into the Philippines, right? I mean, as an example, KKR has about 30 billion of investments in Asia. So 1 billion for the Philippines might sound big from one perspective, but to me, why isn't it bigger compared to the other countries that KKR is investing in?
Absolutely.
So we all want a bigger share of the global capital flows, right? So I guess in general, as a foreign investor, we are very open to partnering with local groups because we want to leverage on their relationships and expertise and resources on the ground. But perhaps one suggestion is if there could be a bit more flexibility on the foreign ownership limits on certain sectors as appropriate over time. I'm sure many investors would say having a blanket 40%, on most industries, may prevent more capital to go into those specific sectors. I think a second suggestion would be, and I think the Create bill is a good example of this, is if we are making some changes, let's try to do it very, very quickly so that there's no long transition period where we're not sure what to put on our investment models. Do I put this tax rate, or do I put this tax rate, or do I guess some hybrid transition? During those periods, it's very hard for foreigners to commit. And so while we always have those improvements over time, and we can't, and they are in every country in the world, if we can try and do them as fast as possible, then you then clarify the rules for investors. So it's a matter of kind of putting the right resources to those things.
Very sound. Sorry, you were saying you still have one more?
Maybe I'm happy to stop there.
but you know what? They're very sound suggestions. Travis,
we do have regular dialogue with, of course, the secretaries, and the department heads to say, here are the sort of things that we think all foreign investors would like to see, and if it's something that makes sense, let's all work together to put them into the Philippines, especially if other Asian countries have those features and we're lagging.
Exactly. I was saying that even Arangkada has a very, very extensive list of should-bes, for us to be truly competitive in attracting foreign investments. It's really a question of political will. So let's hope at the 19th Congress or the 20th Congress, we will see some light in as far as reforms are concerned. Let me swing over to Kevin. You said, and by the way, Kevin, your report was very interesting. I read it last night, and not only interesting, informative, and makes a lot of sense. Well, you said that the adoption of digital technology can help the country overcome the effects of the crisis. Now, my question is, what are the skill gaps that we have to address?
Okay. So definitely, thank you, Andrew, for that question. Sure. So it's more like, I think more than the skill gap, it's more like the problem is really more on the digital divide. Some people have access to internet and some people do not have access to internet. We can definitely see with the cases of children right now, of our school youth, some of them can do online remote learning while others cannot do so. So they use other technology instead. So that is one of the area that we should really look at when it comes to digital divide on the access to internet. Now, beyond that, of course, we also need digital skills and literacy. I think there was a study made by, I forgot who the authors, but then in the Philippines, they found out that when it comes to digital skills and literacy, there's a big divide, a big gap between, let's say, those who are rich and not and the poor, old people versus young people, and school children. So really, we also need to improve on the digital literacy of people. Now, the Department of Education has worked on this one. I think in the new K-12 program, they also plan to, they had planned to incorporate some digital skills and learning. So these are good news on that aspect.
Kevin, that's a little bit confusing for me because when you speak about digital divide, as of last year, our internet penetration was already at 72.7%. So isn't that kind of democratic on the democratic side? In other words, 72.7% of our population has access to internet and chances are owns a smartphone. So how do you mean exactly with digital divide?
Actually, yeah, it's also on the use of the internet. I think when we have this number 72, it's internet penetration. But if you look at in the Philippines and our culture, how we use it, social media. We usually, I think 4 hours to 5 hours, people use the internet for social media. But if you're looking at cases where we can use it for learning, for remote learning, for these things, for improving on our business organization, our business operations. So I think this is where we lack. So with the 72%, yeah, it's more like using it for people who have smartphones. They use it for watching videos, watching YouTube, or social media, but not really on those productive usage.
Got it. Thank you, Kevin. Let me direct this next question to Jake. I was quite, how shall we say this? The right word is disturbed, maybe that's a too strong a word, but in the privatization of NAIA, okay, the NEDA required 30% equity upfront of the entire project cost, as opposed to the normal 20 to 30% of each phase. As you know, projects such of this scale, like NAIA's rehabilitation, comes in several phases. In this case, it's really 4 phases over 6 years. So the equity requirement is, to my opinion, unreasonably large. And I'm afraid that this might set a precedent for future PPP deals. What is your comment on this?
We were part of the negotiation for the first unsolicited proposal from the 7 consortiums. In fact, I was part of among the last few items that are being discussed, and we went to Singapore to look for a specific item that's in the proposal of the proponents. I think the concern, I would rather talk on the concern of the government. Concern of the government, because this is the NAIA airport project is already at they're already experiencing congestion. It's operating beyond capacity. In fact, last year they almost hit 50 million, more than the 40 million capacity. And travel and business will continue to grow. So I think what the government would like to be assured of is that the whoever would come in to play the role as the operator of Metro Manila terminals should have enough financing, not just relying on the incomes from the operation to implement those much needed and much delayed infrastructure component for the rehabilitation of NAIA. I think the government would like to, during the negotiation, the government would like to have some of the components of the upgrading at the first part of the first phase of the concession, while the private sector thinks it's on the second or third phase. So those opposing views can rather be addressed on the part of the government, that whoever will come in will have the enough financial muscle to ensure, because it will be dictated by numbers and traffic later on. When the numbers will come in and the private sector cannot deny, because they are missing the key performance indicators that they need to implement it. They should have the financing to implement it, and not just relying from the annual revenue streams coming from the operation. I think that's where the government want to be assured of, that the much needed upgrade of the terminal rehabilitation must be done at the first phase, not on the proposal of the private sector at the second or third phase.
Got it. But do you think that this will be a precedent for other PPP undertakings?
Not necessarily to be uniformly applied, because some of the projects like utilities will take a much longer time
period.
Yes. So the government is open to relaxing and absorbing some of the risks at the start, and then the private sector can take care of the other risks. When the project has taken off, then that's the time for the private sector to step in. So I think it's more of the nature of the project that the government will want to share with the private sector.
You're absolutely right. The NAIA, I was just there the other day. Although it's very comfortable now, the congestion is not apparent. But this is a window that we have to really catch up, with adding capacity. And so there really is an urgency to rehabilitate NAIA. And I know that Megawide was awarded, or has the OPS at the moment. Do you see any impediments, and do you think that they can secure their ICC approval by the end of the year?
Well, it's up to, I think the government has already listed down the requirements in order for the project to be endorsed by NEDA to NEDA ICC, which is shared by the Finance Secretary and NEDA Secretary. So it's up to the proponent, Megawide, and its partner, GMR, who are also our partner in Clark, they build the facility, to prove that they have the technical and financial muscle to build this or to implement the upgrading of NAIA. I think the government or the private sector is aware of the requirements of the government in order to secure clearance from NEDA ICC.
let's hope that happens sooner rather than later. So back to Paulo, I'd like to ask you, as a chief planner of the Ayala Group, what sectors do you think need the most urgent attention as far as infrastructure is concerned, and how can Ayala fill the gap?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. Certainly not the easiest time to do any planning, as I'm sure many of us do. What's the best way to predict the future is to create it. It's so hard to create the future, like but I guess I will say, Andrew, that from what we're seeing, this pandemic, this crisis that we're going through, even with the vaccine, this will still take some time. And we're projecting multi-year for us. So that said, as we look at, for instance, our group of businesses, we're looking very, very closely at where it is that we can create value and make sure that we take advantage of opportunities through the pandemic. So that not only do we come out of the pandemic stronger, but that we are able to lay the foundation for growth across different sectors. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do because it's really hard to predict the real estate for it. But we're making, I guess, some hypotheses about the future and laying down some, I guess, as further, the structure, the form of utilities would be needed even further. We think, as I mentioned earlier, social infrastructure in the form of healthcare. It's in those places that people need to look proactively. And I would add logistics. Correct. I think it's something that, especially as Kevin mentioned earlier, with digital transactions becoming more prevalent, the proper logistical network. But I think, bottom line, I think it's perfect time as any. I mean, risk aside, health risks aside, and I know, as I mentioned earlier, it's sometimes hard to get construction workers. But it's a perfect time as any, right, to build infrastructure and to deploy capital on bankable projects. But if not now, when? Right? We have to do something with Maria. If we can do it now, while traveling,
Yeah, absolutely.
Projects that we can do with our highways, with our tollways, with our trains. That was the best way to do it. If there are new hospital beds that we need to construct, it's best a time as any to do it. And so that's our perspective. And so we're looking very closely at where we would deploy capital over the next 2 to 3 years to make sure we're laying the foundations for growth for us as a group of companies.
Thank you, Paulo. And speaking of long-drawn recovery, I know that I know for a fact that the stimulus fund, or the lack thereof, plays a big factor in the speed of our recovery. And so I'd like to ask Ed, what are your views about the allocation for stimulus fund, which is really just 5.77% of GDP, as compared to 10% of Vietnam and 29% of Singapore. What are your views about this, Ed?
Yeah, that's really a tough question. And maybe because I have to say also, maybe I'm a bit biased because of course I'm on the financial sector side. So I've always been concerned about our credit ratings, our ability to fund our deficits, because it's easy to say, bring it up to 20-30%. But then if we really don't have the revenues and the collections, we might become a basket case again. So yes, admittedly, the fund is not as big, but in a way also I agree with Secretary Dominguez on what they're doing. There's just so much we can put in. So that's why at least hopefully the CREATE bill and the FIST bills, which were approved by the Senate, if they're implemented, that will level the playing field. Hopefully it will encourage more investors to come in because corporate taxes are going down. Although for some of the foreign companies, of course, they have some concerns because their tax holidays were removed, but hopefully it will improve still overall. And I'm just hoping that the vaccine will come earlier so that even if we have, I agree, it's small, relatively smaller, but I hopefully with making the most of what we have, and then the rest can just pick it up. And in fact, that's why, in a way, the private sector recognizes that, but it's not something that we're really complaining about because we understand. And that's why when you see, for example, when you see the Zubels, the Cs, the Razons, the Angs, diba, announcing that they're working together, as Paulo mentioned. Now we're all aligned together. We're sacrificing profits we have on the Greenbelt malls, the SM malls, the Robinson malls. We're foregoing revenues from our SMEs, and we have nobody to turn to, but that hits our bottom line. So we're doing that to help them, the SMEs. And then we're bringing in our own vaccines for all our different conglomerates. We're not getting reimbursed for that. Our bosses are not, but we're doing that to ensure safety so that we can go to work and, at least provide the services that are necessary. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, even the MVP group is also at the forefront. So a lot of this, in fact, is, I'm not even sure, maybe Paul, you can elaborate, is there an ROI for this? Because a lot of this is being done from the heart. We're not sure if we're going to be making money of it, but it's just improving the safety of our employees so that we can provide basic services. But I know that just shows you that's the bayanihan spirit in a way, because there's no ROI return, and yet the conglomerates are helping. They're not doing this, they're not trying to get pogi points, but they just want to help. And we want the people to feel more comfortable so that the economy will restart. So I guess we're still positive, but then some of these investments are, I guess, philanthropic, maybe more than they are from a capital perspective.
Well, I would suppose that if we had the kind of numbers of FDIs, no, as some of our neighbors do, it
Like
would
Vietnam,
really it would really be a big help to narrow the gap. So, which brings me to my next question to Michael is, at what industries do you see the Philippines as having a competitive advantage? And for KKR, what sectors are you looking to invest in, apart from infrastructure?
Okay. I'll mention two of our investment themes that I think apply very well to the Philippines. One is this whole notion of consumption upgrade, which means as the country gets wealthier, as the middle class gets bigger, everyone will want better services, better products. So everyone wants, higher quality food, safer, cleaner food, water, better transportation, better digital services, more conveniences. So all of that encompasses a range of industries, whether it be telco, food, retailing. So we're very bullish on those sectors and industries which cater to the increasing needs of a nation that's actually getting wealthier. And I like to think that we can do more investments in those areas in the Philippines. I look with jealousy at what my colleagues are doing, say, in places like India, where it seems to attract a lot more, capital, because there seems to be more projects, more deals. There seems to be a project every week in India, allowing foreigners to invest. So hopefully, we will, encourage the parties in the Philippines to make more investments in this particular time, despite the COVID environment. The other theme that I wanted to mention, which hopefully apply to the Philippines, probably more on the medium term, longer term, less so in the near term, is we're really leaning a lot into technology and how that disrupts current industries. And I know the Ayalas and the SM group, they see this as well, because in other countries, as the country gets richer, the people will embrace more technology, where we will have people using 5G and fiber. And so again, I look with jealousy at my colleagues who just invested into a large broadband company in India, whose mission is to try and create cashless payment and fintech to connect really all of its equivalent of sari stores across India. And we're talking about tens of thousands of little enterprises to be interconnected using technology. That's something that I hope we can do in the Philippines, sooner rather than later as a Filipino. So hopefully those things will happen. So those two major themes I wanted to say it's something that we'd love to do more of in the Philippines.
Thank you, Michael. I'm reminded of what one of my favorite economists and good friend, for that matter, ADB chief economist Jesus Felipe, told me that if there's anything that the Philippines has a natural competitive advantage in, it's digital technology, and which dovetails to what Kevin has been saying. No, so Kevin, let me ask you. President Duterte has made it a national priority to digitize government agencies. Are you privy to the program? And where are we in the digital migration of government agencies and LGUs?
Well, I'm not too privy in the program, but then I definitely know that certain agencies have been championing some of this automation and modernization of processes. For example, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is pushing for the e-payment facility. I think some agencies like BIR and DOC are already going into that area. And DICT and ARTA, two champions when it comes to the e-business permit and licensing system. This is a very good initiative, especially that it will allow LGU to process permits and licenses electronically. That would be a good step, especially for improving the ease of doing business in our country. And perhaps another point, a final point, would be the adoption of e-signatures. I think DICT is also the one who is at the forefront of this one. And as of March, SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, they already rolled out this the acceptance of e-signatures in some corporate filings. So some good news on that in these areas.
On these areas, yes, but also I think digital wallets. This is not government, but digital wallets have become mainstream, no? And even my spouse, my wife, who is not a technology person, no, she's a food historian, has adopted to digital wallets.
Gcash, PayMaya,
yes. And all that, no. How evolved are we in this space? Because I know this is fundamental to the growth of the digital business, no, the digital industries. How advanced or how behind are we in this space in fintech and digital financing as compared to our neighbors?
Well, I can't really give a comparison right now, but then when it comes to advancement, acceleration, definitely if there's one good thing that came out from the COVID pandemic would be the acceleration of digital payment in the Philippines. We've been using Gcash, PayMaya, and also some online banking services. I understand that with PesoNet and InstaPay, for the first half of the year, the growth numbers is something like 150%, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely good news. There is acceleration in comparison to other regional neighbors. I can't give this number yet, but then on our end, on our capability, there's a big jump already.
Okay, I have a question here from one of the members of the audience, and this is directed to Ed. How much pressure is on banks to fund large projects such as infrastructure when income from consumer lending is basically zero and interest rates are record lows? This is from one of our audience participants, Ed.
Right. Andrew, thank you. I saw the question from Warren. Yeah, except I'm a little confused on the question about the consumers, I guess, not having money. I guess depends on what kind of infrastructure it will be. In general, I guess banks are always looking for projects. So as long as it's viable, then of course we'll want to fund it. Now, if the question was, for example, toll roads, I just an example, there's no guarantee that people will use the roads. But then in general, we know because there's traffic and we know that once, all this mobility is fixed and the RFIDs, everybody gets RFIDs and people start going out again, then we're long-term believers in toll roads. We will invest in that for an infrastructure. But so I'm not sure when the consumer link was in that question of Warren, because if it's going to be paid by the consumers and if they have no money, if it's a consumer related project, then I guess we'll have to be more careful on where the cash flows will come from, right? But in general, for example, will I invest in a new airport? I'll probably be careful because there's no flights yet. But once the vaccine is there, then we'll be more comfortable. We'll be more comfortable again. Depends on the projects, but there's in fact, it's not the pressure. We're not being pressured to lend. There's no need to pressure us because we want to lend because we have extra capital. It's a disservice to our equity holders by not using our balance sheets, Andrew. So we're excited. We just need more projects, and of course, it's a delicate mix of structuring it. There's no perfect project. We're not asking for guarantees, but if it's a private sector project, as long as there's adequate demand that it can be shown, I think it can be done. And I work with Ayala Group and with KKR on several projects. So we have several, there are these themes that we look at that we're comfortable. Generally, anyway, the conglos, the foreign companies, and the banks have the same, we see eye to eye on these things. So it's not a problem. So once there are more projects to invest, especially if foreign ownership is fixed, that's what Mike alluded to, because there's some industries where they can come in, right? Like media maybe, and some telcos. Although I think in December, supposedly this year or this month, there might be some relaxation on some telcos. At least that's one way to get more investors in, and we'll be happy to finance them.
Thank you. I've been asked to begin the wrap up of this very interesting discussion. Why don't we give a 1 minute last statement from each of our panelists, and let us start with Jake.
Thank you. First, I'd like to, from what I've heard from my co-panelists, I'd like to appreciate what Mr. Paulo has mentioned earlier about the private sectors leading the government's response to COVID pandemic. Many private companies have helped in fact, some of the initiatives that the government have launched, like the T3, the test, treat, and trace, is being headed by private sector. So the government is very appreciative for that bayanihan spirit being shown by the private sector. And also, like what Mr. Michael has mentioned earlier about the governments need to be mindful of what the foreign investors need. So the economic team is pushing hard really to open up many businesses to private companies or private sector, allowing 100% foreign participations. They're redefining the definition of public service or public sector. They're excluding many businesses there like telecommunication, transportation, and they're limiting it to just few in order to give opportunities to foreign and private sector companies. And also, as I've heard, that there are many winners in this crisis that we've had, the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. Like in the logistics, we're happy from the BCDA and the national government side, we are about to announce a big FDI in terms of cargo business. I think it's in cargo and logistics that came out to be as winners. In fact, I saw the name of the private sector among the sponsors in the bar in the screen. So, but soon we're going to announce that they're building a huge terminal for Southeast Asia, the size of which is like the terminal building that we have constructed for Clark. So the government is laying a very healthy environment for private companies to come in, be it in regulation, be it in infrastructure support, and other ways that the government can provide much needed support in order for the Philippines to catch up with the ASEAN countries. So I think the government has shown it means business in implementing what it has started and planned under this administration. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bingkang, and we certainly appreciate all the work, all the good work that the BCDA is doing, and the rest of the government units. Let's have the 1 minute closing from Ayala's Mr. Paulo Borromeo.
Well, first of all, Andrew, thank you. You've done a great job facilitating, great questions.
Thank you.
I think it was on the ball. I do think back to the topic at hand, infrastructure running in place. I think it's also, and excellent comments from my co-panelists, but I think we should also recognize that much work has been done, has been done. is being done as much as to the extent we can throughout the crisis. In terms of encouraging more investments, we see. I know there's more to do, but there's much work that has been done legislatively at the same time in the form of specific infrastructure projects, and so I think that's worth giving a nod to. I also wanted to thank, as engineer mentioned, our joint collaboration amongst all the stakeholders. And it's unfortunate Secretary Vince wasn't here, but Engineer Jake, please extend our thanks. He has been a fantastic leader for the group at T3. Between him, Secretary Galvez, and CABSEC, and the other government leaders, and it's just been such a pleasure working with them, and please extend our thanks. I also wanted to say to the rest of the private sector community, just what a wonderful thing that we are all working together to Ed and BDO and the SM group and the other groups as well. It's so encouraging to see all of us coming together, and also to the World Bank, to the IFC, to the ADB. I see them coming up to bat, to help out in different projects and initiatives. But lastly, Andrew, of course, also a big thank you to the Joint Foreign Chambers. This is not a local problem, right? This is something that all of us are participating in. And I see the American Chamber, the European Chamber, the Japanese Chamber, they're all helping in one form or another, contending with this crisis. I guess finally, just to reiterate what I said, this is still a long drawn crisis. I think it's great to see progress on the vaccine side, on the testing side. But from what we're seeing within our group, there are two important things that need to happen over the next 2 to 3 years. One is consumption needs to somehow get back on track. And we're a consumption-driven economy, as we all know. And Michael mentioned it earlier, right? The power of the Filipino consumer. That Filipino consumer, the spending habits and behavior is muted in the crisis. And we're seeing that across all our metrics. We had thought it would be a V-shaped recovery. It is not. It is a flatter, longer type of recovery that we're seeing, especially in terms of consumer metrics. And this is across all of our businesses. The second, which is on point to our topic, is the importance of infrastructure investments. And I just wanted to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, that now is as good a time as any, right, to put in money into bankable projects for infrastructure and to sort of fix the roof, right, while we can, especially with critical infrastructure projects such as the airport, the toll roads, the railroads, and other things. So would encourage everyone, of course, to consider infrastructure investment moving forward.
Thank you, Paulo. And thank you also to Ayala Health for stepping up when you weren't even asked. I recall how you speedily and swiftly established those testing laboratories almost overnight. So thank you for that. Let's have a final word from Mr. Ed Francisco, BDO Capital.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Just some key points. I guess I totally agree with what everybody else has said. So I guess we encourage more financing and investments, especially because it helps the GDP growth, as consumer spending is a little muted now, as Paulo said. It helps us long term. And you will note that the large conglos are also looking now at sustainable financing. It's not anymore not just any kind of financing. The private sector is there. We're there to work with the government. And we're there to do our shares, as you've seen. The banks will also always be there, where we have healthy balance sheets. And we're there not just to help the large conglos, but even the SMEs. So that's very important for you to know. And I guess lastly, everybody be careful. Unfortunately, we can't have our Christmas parties because the IATF does not allow it, right? There are no large gatherings. But I also encourage you to spend wisely and spend, because if you don't spend, then there's no consumer demand, then there's no sales for some of the SMEs. And if there's no SME growth, there's no GDP growth. And then it becomes a vicious circle. And then there's no need for us to invest because there's no spending. So again, it's good to be careful. It's good to be, I guess, stay home is to be safe. But if you always just stay home and don't go out, don't eat out, don't spend, it also becomes a virtuous cycle. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Ed. That was a very, very good advice. Very sensible. Mr. Michael de Guzman, your final words, please, KKR.